I'm here today with Dr. Cleveland Hill, Cleve Hill, who was a classmate of Houston Cunningham at Magnolia High School back in the late '60s, and a basketball star. So Dr. Hill, we're glad to have you here today, and tell us something about your early days of growing up in Moss Point, and then particularly your days at Magnolia. So why don't you, again, thank you. Why don't you just start off by telling us a little bit about what you remember about first getting into sports, pickup games, or just when you were a little guy, if you were ever a little guy.
Oh, yeah. Well, in a funny story, and give me a hands up if I start talking too much, because I have a tendency to go on and on sometimes. But I remember being in the 6th grade, and I was 6 feet or 1 inch tall, and some kids were doing some silly things at school, and I was in there with them, and my teacher said, "Boy, you too big to be acting so stupid," And I remember thinking then, I'm still only 12 years old. What does size got to do with it? But anyway, I had a great uncle that lived here in Moss Point, and he had a series of strokes, and his wife at the time asked me to come and help take care of him, to go to Magnolia High School, and so I agreed to do that. And 2 months after I got here, he passed away. But one of his last wishes was that I stay with her to help take care of, be a man around the house, if you will. And so I did. And then I don't know where the word came from. I think it was a relative or a friend of ours said that Mr. Ward, Gosselin Ward, was the head basketball coach, wanted me to play basketball. Now, I had played pickup basketball all the time, but I had never considered playing organized basketball, because let's face it, I just didn't think I was good enough, and this is 1964. So I went and tried out for the team, and as they say, the rest is kind of history there.
Oh, wow. So how old were you when you tried out for the team?
14.
14, and
Yes.
That was a high school team you were trying?
That was a high school, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So did you play? What grade were you in?
9th grade.
9th grade. So did you play in the 9th grade?
I played some in the 9th grade, and I played more and more as the season went along. When you first start out playing organized basketball, things are moving around you so fast. In a game situation, you just feel like, man, I'm never going to be able to fit into this. But as they say in sports now, as you play more, the game seems to slow down, where you feel like you are really a part of what's going on. And so I think it was a game we played up at Beaumont, Mississippi, and they put me in the game, and all of a sudden, for some reason, I started to understand what this thing was all about, and gradually as the year went on, I began to play more and more. And I think by the end of that season, that first season, I was starting. Probably the last 5 or 6 games I was starting.
Wow. Were y'all competitive that year? Did you win a lot of games?
We lost more that first year than we won. I'll tell you that. But we were competitive in every game.
Yeah. Who was the main competition?
Biloxi, Nichols High School in Biloxi, 33rd Avenue High School in Gulfport. They had a high school in North Gulfport, so, they were all seasoned veterans, I guess you might say, as far as high school is concerned. And I think they beat us twice. All 3 of those schools beat us twice that first year.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So who were some of your classmates or teammates in the 9th grade year?
Elijah Henry was a teammate.
So is this Elijah Henry that went on to be a Methodist pastor?
Same person.
Yeah.
Same person. Wilbert Norwood, he was a couple of years ahead of me, in school. Turned out to be a good basketball player. Frank Mayo, I don't know whatever happened to Frank. He was 2 years ahead of me. David Ray Henry, Elijah's brother. We were on the team together. And of course, coming off the bench in those days was Houston Cunningham and Earthy McMillan. You know, Earthy's since passed away, of course. Yeah, those are pretty much the ones I remember. Oh, Eugene Mosley, he was on the team, even though his sport was football. He was big enough where he could
Yeah.
he could move some people around in basketball. So and Gene was on the team. Tyrone Kennedy, Tyrone basically was a football player, but these guys were great athletes, so they played a little basketball too.
Right. What was it like going to Magnolia during those days?
Uh, I was a new kid in town. I came to Magnolia in '64. First 4 or 5 months was a acclimation period for me. I didn't know anybody coming to Moss Point, and so it took me time to gradually, I guess you say, fit in and get to know people. And after things began to settle down, it was fun. It was fun. I really enjoyed high school. And I want to emphasize that I really enjoyed high school. And looking back on it, I know the reason why. Reason why for me is that, my mom passed away in 1962. And my dad from 63 to 65 was pretty much absent. And then when I decided to come here, I saw him briefly. And so I went from 1965 until 1971 not seeing my dad. On reflection now, I realized that those men teachers and coaches at Magnolia High School, they were my salvation. If not for those men and their influence, and it wasn't any rah, rah, rah stuff type of stuff. It was just that this is the way men can live. And I look back on that now, and I really believe that that was my salvation. I believe that those men had an influence on me that, have, pretty much gotten me to where I am today.
So let's name some of those guys, if you would. So you've already talked about Coach Ward, and who were the others that
Coach Ward
influenced?
definitely was an influence. My second high school coach there was Mr. Ira Pope. He became our high school coach in my senior year, but he was also my teacher in a couple of classes there. And, he was very comedic. He had a comedy way about him. But in those little things that he would say to have everybody laughing, it also had an impact on me. Mr. Roy Banks, taught mathematics. Mr. Banks was basically, put your mind to it, you can do it. If you put your mind to it, you can do it. Mr. Grover Lett. Mr. Lett is still around here, and I remember Mr. Lett from his early days because he wore a suit every day,
Wow.
and he looked like a scholar, if you will. But just seeing the way he dressed and the way he carried himself, Mr. Alton Joseph was our guidance counselor in later years. In the first couple of years, he was my teacher in civics, and we didn't get along, you know. But gradually over time, what he began to say and do for us really had an impact. And I could go on and on, but Mr. Sebring, Royce, Mr. Sebring, can't think of his first name now. I'm having a senior moment. Mr. Sebring was the principal. Mr. Sebring was a stern person. He was stern disciplinarian, and he disciplined everybody. He didn't play favorites. If you did the right things, you were all right with him. But if you did the wrong thing, it didn't matter who you were, whether you were a teacher, a staff member, or a student. He was very stern with you and let you know that you are not going to do these things at this school and get away with it. He had a definite influence on me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you went on to have a distinguished career and got your doctorate. So the foundation, the education foundation you got at Magnolia must have been pretty solid. Is that?
It definitely was. And again, I go back to, and I'm not, believe me, in no way am I denigrating the women teachers that taught me, because I learned a lot from them. But the greatest influence in my life, because of what happened with my father's situation, it was the men. And they basically infused into me this belief that if you work hard at it, put your mind to it, you can get it done. Okay? I have to mention Arthur Haynes too, because he was not officially working at the school, but he would come and work out with us in basketball. And he pushed us to a limit that we didn't think we could go to. We always thought that, wow, I can't go anymore. And he shows you that, hey, you could push yourself. If you are an athlete, you are expected to push yourself a little bit harder than a regular student. And he did that for us. And so I can never forget. I can never forget his influence.
Wow. So back to basketball. So when you were a senior, I understand you had a really good year, maybe won all or most of the games.
We were 24-6.
24-6.
Right.
Was that the best record in the conference?
I'm pretty sure it was.
So did you beat Biloxi and Gulfport that year?
We beat Gulfport 30-30 High. We beat them every time we played them. Nichols High, Biloxi, we split with them. I think we played them a total of 4 times that year. 2 times in the regular season and 2 times in tournaments. We won both tournament games. The last tournament game was for this conference championship, and we beat them 75-59.
Wow. Wow, that must have been an exciting game.
That was a very exciting game because in every game that we played them that year, even the ones that we lost to them, they always started out with a big lead. And in that last game we played, we gradually nipped away at it and came out to that final score.
So what kind of defense did you play? Did you play a zone defense or man-to-man or both?
From what I remember, we tried to play both. Back in those days, the emphasis was on offense. Evidently we did pretty good on defense, but I remember us emphasizing the offensive side of the ball real good. But the one thing I do remember from that championship game with Nichols High, they had a little guy, I can't remember his real name, but they called him Fat Man. And he was one of those guys that was like Bill Bradley. He never stood still on the basketball court. He was always in motion and moving. And time after time, they utilized that to get him to cut to the basket and score. And I remember Coach Polk telling me, we have got to stop him from doing this, okay? So one time he was cutting to the basket, and he was looking at the ball. He wasn't looking at me. That was the first and only offensive foul I took in high school. He ran into me, and it knocked him out. They had to take him out of the game. I'm talking literally, it knocked him out. They took him out of the game. And without his offense, I think that we were able to prevail. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So he ran into you, and there was a charging foul?
There was a charging foul. That was the first charging foul I ever took, and that was the first charging foul. No, that was the second charging foul that I had seen an official call in my high school career. The first one came the night before. Houston Cunningham took a charging foul in a game against North Gulfport. And the score was like 104 to 102, final score.
Oh, good.
They had the ball, they were driving. This guy he was driving the ball, and he drove into Houston. I remember Houston doing like this, backing up, looking at the referee, and the referee called charging foul on the guard. And we got possession of the ball and ran the clock out.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So you went on to play college ball at Nichols State?
College ball at Nichols State University, yes. It was Nichols State College when I first went there. And
so what was the college recruitment like for you?
It wasn't big. Somebody told me when I began my coaching career, somebody told me you could draw a line along Interstate 10 from Houston to Jacksonville, Florida, and you're talking about football country.
Yeah.
So basketball, even though we had great teams, basketball was not well publicized in those days. So I was recruited by Perkinson Junior College at that time, which is Gulf Coast. I was recruited by West Virginia State University because I had a cousin that lived in West Virginia, and I was recruited by Jackson State. But Coach Polk, these were the days before integration of colleges and universities as well as high school. And Nichols was getting ready to integrate their sports program. Coach Polk pulled me aside and said, basically, Clee, this is something that has to be done. And he said, if you decide not to go there, at least go for a visit. And so I did go for a visit. There was another kid in from the Jackson area, Mississippi. He came down and I went, and one of my classmates from here went with me, Ephraim Lee. But we went down and I heard the coach from the school in Jackson. He had come with the player. He was talking to the university president at the time. And he asked the president of that university at the time, why are y'all doing this now? And the president said, this is something, it's time to get it done. Basically the same thing that Coach Polk had said. And it struck me, maybe it is time to get this done. So that was the reason I chose to go to Nichols State College, because it was time to get it done.
Wow. So you went on to graduate from Nichols State and then get your doctorate from Nichols State?
No? I graduated from Nichols State in 1972, joined the Army.
Okay.
Okay, my bachelor's degree was in liberal arts. And when I got my degree in 72, nobody was hiring anybody with a degree in liberal arts.
Mm.
So I went with the person that I knew was going to be hiring people. That was the United States Army.
Uh-oh.
They weren't turning anybody down in 72. And I got to tell you a funny aside from this. I went to the recruiting office up here in Moss Point. And I told the recruiter I want to join. He said, this is Vietnam War going on. Nobody was joining.
No.
They were getting drafted.
No.
Not joining.
Yep.
Said, I want to join the Army. And he said, well, do you have any schooling? I said, yes. He said, you got a high school diploma? I said, yes. Have you ever gone to college? I got a college degree. He looked at me funny and he said, you want to join the Army? I said, yes. He said, let me look at your arms. I held my arms out like this. So I was looking to see if you had any needle tracks on your arms. He thought I was on drugs. I said, no. I said, I need a job. I'm about to get married. Uncle Sam is hiring. Nobody else is. So that's why I went into the Army.
Wow.
Left the Army, came back to Nichols State, got certified to teach. And after that, worked on my master's degree at Nichols State. And then after the master's degree, started coaching college basketball. I did that for 6 years, from 1979 to 1985. In 1985, the chair of the physical education department came to me and said, we have a position open. I'd like for you to apply for it. And I did. I got that position. And after a while, I didn't have a degree in physical education. Remember, my degree was in liberal arts and my master's degree was in education administration. I decided, I need to work on a doctorate if I want to stay in academics. And that's what I did. And so I started that process in 1987, 1993, finished the doctorate. And
there at Nichols State?
University of New Orleans for my doctorate.
Okay, University of New Orleans.
University of New Orleans, yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. Wow. Well, congratulations on a terrific career.
But it goes back to that influence in high school. Put your mind to it, work hard at it, you can get it done.
Yeah. Having a champion or more than one or two champions early on is important, isn't it?
It really is important, and it's important for this reason. I'll tell anybody, and I've told this story plenty of times. I never stopped working while I was working on a doctorate degree. I kept my full-time job. I was driving from Thibodaux, where I live, to New Orleans, which to the campus of the University of New Orleans is about 60 miles. I was driving there 3 nights a week sometimes and working all day long. And I tell people all the time, there were many, many, many nights I would be driving back home late, rain, cold, whatever, And I said, this is it. I quit. I'm not going back, you know. But that old athlete in you, you wake up the next morning and you remember what you went through as an athlete and what it instilled in you, and you get back up and you go the next day. You don't ever quit. That's one thing that separates athletics and athletes from a lot of other people. We get pushed to the grind, but we have a little bit more juice in the tank, more so than we think sometimes.
Yeah.